Good evening, everyone. I call the meeting to order. I will be calling roll this evening. Mr. Zajac.
Here.
Ms. Renee.
Here.
Mr. Wardell.
Here.
Mr. Kosis.
Here.
Mrs. Lewis.
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Calhoun.
Here.
And myself. I am here. Notice requirements, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975 have been satisfied by publication of said notice in the Asbury Park Press and the Coaster, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. If everybody please join me in flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have to add something to communications. Mayor Brown, with this letter I am submitting my resignation from the position of technical assistant to the construction office official and assistant to the municipal clerk effective January 8th, 2019. Thank you for the opportunity and experience I gained during my 4 years working in Neptune City. I also feel fortunate to have worked with some of the most dedicated, loyal, and kind people I've ever met during my time here. Respectfully, Corinne DeCorsia. It's council's pleasure.
Receive and file.
Receive and file by Mr. Wardell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zajac. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Corinne was quite an asset for us. I wish her the best. We have no other presentations, public participation for any of the agenda items. Anybody wish to be heard on the agenda items? Okay, seeing none, I will move right to resolution 2019-21, resolution permitting prepayment of certain items. What is the council's pleasure?
So offered, Mayor.
Offered by Mr. Zajac,
No.
That was me.
or Mr. Wardell, I'm sorry.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zajac, sorry. Are there any questions? Roll call. Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
No.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
No.
Mr. Lewis? Mrs. Lewis?
No.
Mr. Calhoun?
No.
Resolution is defeated. It came with strong recommendation from the CFO to either dissolve or approve that resolution. So that's why it's back on the, that was why it was back on the, agenda tonight, because I do have a lot of respect for the knowledge from the CFO, and he asked that we do one or the other. So I will do that to him tomorrow. Next on the agenda. A new business. Resolution 19-22, appointing the interim municipal borough administrator. Somebody like to offer that?
So offered.
Offered by Mr. Zajac. Seconded by Mr. Wardell. Are there any questions? Roll call. Yeah, I'm used to saying roll call to myself. So. Mr. Zajac?
Yes.
Ms. Renee?
No.
Mr. Wardell?
Yes.
Mr. Kosis?
No.
Mrs. Lewis?
No.
Mr. Calhoun?
No.
I just want to go on the record as we are continually, intentionally and deliberately violating a borough ordinance as we are right now, and the borough cannot move anywhere and do anything.
Can we say anything now, Mr. Wardell?
You can't say, you can't talk now, I'm sorry. I apologize, that was.
That's all right.
Resolution 2019-23, confirming appointment of municipal attorney, borough attorney. Somebody like to offer that?
So offered.
Offered by Mr. Wardell,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Zajac. Are there any questions? I just want to be very clear about this. I want to be on the record about this. In December, we went out for RFQs for all professionals. Not normal, what Neptune City normally does. It was a lot of work. A lot of professionals sent, proposals in for everything from municipal attorney right straight through to land use attorney, engineers, bond counsel, insurance reps. I had 3 following the criteria, which is set forth right here, which I will leave for everybody to look at. We had 3 municipal attorneys apply. We had the office of Maggs and McDermott, we had the office of Sobel Hahn, LLP, and we had Arbus, Maybrook, and Good. 2 of the attorneys that applied were deficient of the criteria stated in the resolution that was advertised and approved by this governing body. That is why on January 1st, I put the Arbus, Maybrook, and Good up for municipal attorney, which, might I add, is one of the reasons why we are in the condition that we are in right now. Roll calls. Zajac.
Yes.
Ms. Renee.
I'm gonna say no, and I'll explain why.
You don't have to. Once the roll call started, there is no more explanations.
We have the right to
Yeah,
say why.
No, you don't. Once
Sure
roll
we
call
do.
starts, no, you missed
From
that.
the
Once
history
roll
of
call,
why we always have.
Mr.
Yeah,
Wardell,
the attorney, you
Yes.
could ask him.
Mr. Kosis, no. Ms. Lewis,
No.
Mr. Wardell,
No, you asked me, got me on.
I'm sorry,
Mr.
Calhoun.
No.
I had to write all this, so. And that's a no. So, we currently still have no municipal attorney. Okay. Public participation on any and all items.
Before we do that, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add 3 more resolutions. Resolution 19-24, accepting Borough Clerk's resignation effective January 7th. Resolution 19-25, scheduling special meeting for January 31st at 7 p.m. And Resolution 19-26, advertising for the new Borough Clerk and new Borough Administrator.
Second. You want to do each one of them, or you want to do them all as one?
Each separately.
So there's a resolution on the table for, what was your first one?
The first one would be Resolution 19-24, accepting the Borough Clerk's resignation effective January 7th, 2019.
Thank you.
And that's the resignation is, okay, and that's the other one?
Resolution 19-25, scheduling special meeting for January 31st, 2019 at 7 p.m. to appoint professional services and volunteers.
Special meeting.
According to state statute.
Well, we don't. We're worried about state statutes now? Really?
Yeah, don't worry, you can ask.
And unfortunately, I don't.
Yeah.
The only people I've been able to speak with all week was the DCA,
It's all free?
so. And the third one was for the professionals, and that was a special meeting. What was the third one? I'm sorry.
The third one, Resolution 19-26, advertising for a new Borough Clerk and a new Borough Administrator.
Borough clerk. And
You need more?
so there's a motion on the floor for, I got it. Resolution accepting resignation of the borough clerk. Somebody want to offer that one?
I'll look for that.
Offered by Mrs. Lewis. Second. Second by Mr. Calhoun. Are any questions? Let's go on a record that this is not necessary to accept the resignation. As soon as it was presented, it was accepted. Roll call. Mr. Zajac.
I don't see a problem with any of this, I'll say yes.
Ms. Renee.
Yes.
Mr. Wardell.
With great regret, I say yes.
Mr. Kosis.
Also with regret, I say yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes, with regrets.
Mr. Calhoun.
Yes.
Resolution's adopted. Second is resolution, schedule a special meeting January 31st, 2019. Somebody want to offer that?
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Renee,
Second.
second by
Mr. Calhoun.
Calhoun. I don't have a cheat sheet, so I gotta write all this down. Mr. Zajac.
Yes.
Ms. Renee.
Yes.
Mr. Wardell.
If I can finish reading it. I'm gonna abstain. I have to have more time to read things before I vote on
Abstain. Mr. Kosis.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Ms. Calhoun.
Yes.
Resolution adopted. Resolution authorizing publication for advertising for open positions for Borough Clerk and Borough Administrator.
So offered.
Offered by Ms. Renee.
Second.
Mr. Zajac.
Yes.
Ms. Renee.
Yes.
Mr. Wardell.
Again, I'm gonna abstain. I'd like to read these before I vote on
Mr. Kosis.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Ms. Calhoun.
Yes.
Resolution adopted. Thank you. Now we will go to public participation for any and all items. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
John Vanderhoff, 290 West Sylvania Avenue. I got a question about the borough clerk resigning. What was her pay, and what are they advertising a new borough clerk for?
I have no idea. This was put in front of me
Well,
tonight.
it sure better be less than what we're paying now,
Well,
because there's no reason for her to resign and being forced to resign, you know? And the second off, all, how can you even have a council meeting when you don't even have a lawyer?
We can still proceed. I checked on that today.
Yeah.
As long as we're recorded and I keep roll call and
Well,
it's
she
all
had
right
a
here.
question right there, and it should have been answered by a lawyer.
You are 100%
Yeah.
correct. That has
It's just-
been quite the issue that is a burden and is going to continue to be a burden
burden,
on the
yeah.
borough, the residents,
Yeah.
the employees, every taxpayer and businesses. Because as of right now, as of borough ordinance, there is no municipal clerk. There will be no OPRA requests filed or responded to. We will miss the dates. We can't pay bills. Nothing can be reviewed. I'm pretty sure right now we will probably lose our grant for our drug alliance. There's quite a few things that needed to be done. The borough administrator is a critical part of the operation, the daily operation of the borough of Neptune City. Council members and myself do not operate the day-to-day operations.
Right.
That's not our job. That's why we hire staff for that. That's why there's layers of government. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do any of that. And I don't have a deputy clerk. I have no clerk. I have no deputy clerk.
What
I have
about
no
the building inspectors and all of that?
building inspectors are still there.
Right.
They don't have a secretary any longer.
Right.
But you know, We don't have a register of vital statistics. We do not have a deputy register of vital statistics. I will be back with the DCA tomorrow, and I really, Ms. Van Hoff, I really don't know what to say. It's a shame that we are in this situation. You know, I want to be very clear. On New Year's Day, I, as the mayor, have a responsibility. By statute, I have a responsibility to make recommendations in the best interest, and in my opinion also, with advice of council. They don't have to necessarily agree with me, not all of them, you know, in my appointments. They're mayor's appointments for professionals. Our administrator could be reappointed at any point so that Neptune City could move forward. He could have been reappointed on New Year's Day. He could have been told the day after that he's no longer with the borough. He could have been told a week after you're no longer with the borough. But the borough could have functioned. I guess that was not, you know, it wasn't even considered. A municipal attorney, myself, when we were asked to vote, the governing body was asked to vote, and we went out for the RFQs. We received 3 RFQs for municipal attorney. One met the criteria. The 3 that came in, you know, I cannot recommend someone who did not meet the criteria.
Right.
I offered the best option. They were qualified, as was stated in the paper, Ms. Renee, correct? You did state that we would be hiring people on their qualifications, not their political.
Well, that's just what I was just gonna ask. Was he
And,
Republican
you know,
or Democrat?
he's a Democrat. They're Democratic firms. That's
Right.
all 3 of the ones that applied were Democratic firms. And, you know, they met the criteria, so I felt it was my responsibility to put them up. But, you know, if they don't get confirmed, they don't get to serve. They don't get to serve the borough.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of like where I'm at with that. Anyone else from the borough wants to be heard? Yes.
Yes, Mayor Brown, I just wanted to know if we could get, I know we've heard between the previous week and now we've heard a lot from your side as to what happened, and I'm just wondering, we have other council members that are sitting up there, and I know that Ms. Renee wanted to speak before, and I'm quite frankly confused by everything that's going on. I don't know what the real story is. I don't know why there hasn't been clearer private communication among everyone. I mean, going forward, I think that everybody has to work together, and I just see a lot of division. And I'm just hoping that the division that's occurring here isn't going to be replicating what's happening nationally, because it's a shame. We live in a very small community, and I think that both sides have to get together and work together, and, you know, there has to be some healing, because this is not good.
Well, my decisions aren't for one side or the other. My decisions are for Neptune City. They're for every resident, whether if they voted Republican or Democrat. I don't really care. The minute that's over, you know, the politics side is over. We have a job. We have a responsibility, not only to the residents, but we have a legal responsibility. When everybody stands up there and they raise their right hand and they take an oath that you're going to do to the best of your ability. I do know that,
Is it true that you went to the DCA and you spoke to them, and what's the whole story with payroll?
Okay,
Are
so
the people being paid or not? And
they
like I
are
said, I
being
do want to
paid.
hear from Ms. Renee as the council president as well as to
Well,
getting what's going on.
I would like to cover something real quick.
Okay.
Because Ms. Renee is council president. And, as per state statute, New Jersey 40A 60-1. The council president is selected annually from among their own members by council and presides in the absence of mayor. And there's a period. So that's council president. No one council member represents the borough or represents the governing body or on behalf of the governing body. When we sit here as a council and we vote, the majority, this is where you're making your decisions. We don't tell employees what to do, we don't instruct, we don't threaten, we don't demand. That's where we have borough administrators, that's why we have borough clerks, that's why we have borough the registrars. That's why we have all that staff, because it's not the governing's body to do things like that. So without those crucial entities in the borough, you know, we really, you know, we are failing. Every one of us are failing the residents. So, you know, I really don't know. Like I said, Mr. Underhill, he's served the borough for the last few years. He's done a great job, 39 years, very knowledgeable on how to operate the borough. That's not I don't know exactly how to, all those things that he knows. He's 39 years operating the borough. I'm a sheet metal contractor. I don't, you know, you need duct work and stuff like that. That's my specialty. And, you know, he, like I said, we could have reappointed him on January 1st. We had the opportunity tonight to reappoint him. He could have went down in the office and we could get some stuff done, like, you know, paying bills, reviewing purchase orders, signing grants. All of those things could have been done. None of that is happening now. It's all, everything is, we are stalemate. There's nothing. There is no operation in the borough downstairs.
And what happens in any town where someone suddenly leaves? Because isn't there supposed to be, like, even with the township clerk that left, isn't there supposed to be like a 60-day, isn't that how it usually works? You have to give notice for 60 days?
And I do not have to give notice. No.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, like, I know I've sat in other towns and other members on the council have been recognized by the mayor and have spoken, and I just don't understand why that doesn't happen here.
Oh, we can. I'm just giving, you know, Mr. Underhill was also, here in Neptune City, you know, we don't have, one person doesn't have one job. Because if we did, we'd have 40 employees downstairs. So each employee has one job or two jobs that they may actually have a salary for. And then there could be 3 and 4 and, you know, 5 other titles that they have, because by statute we have to have those titles, and we don't really need them full time. You know, we have for treasurer. You know, Mr. Underhill was a deputy treasurer. You know, he could sign bills and review purchase orders. He was our deputy clerk, so he could sit here and do the meetings for deputy clerk and as administrator. And if next week or 2 weeks when they, you know, we go out for advertise, because we're gonna have to go out, because there is an employee manual that we have to follow also on a hiring process. So we have to advertise, we have to take the applications in, they have to be reviewed, they have to have interviews, which could be another month. You know, so we could be till the end of February before we have a borough administrator and clerk. So I don't know. I don't know.
And for the one question I asked, are the people getting their pay
They are.
check tomorrow?
So I'll explain how all of that went. So, which is how we ended up in this mess with not having an attorney. So when that resolution got stalled on New Year's Day, according to the CFO, it was vital enough to be on the agenda. It was stalled on the agenda on New Year's Day. And that was a huge concern, because that resolution contains payroll. So the best way to rectify it was to have a special meeting, which was called for, notice to the papers, posted on the sign and posted on the website. The meeting many of you came to, the meeting never took place. We were here. It was an official meeting. No matter what anybody may have thought or told anybody, or what, it was official meeting. You can't, one person cannot cancel a scheduled meeting. And I'm not making this up. You know, like I said, I've run all this through DCA and, you know, back and forth with the director's office, and, you know, they're following up with some of the stuff. You can't. So the easiest thing to do that night would have been come here, and as like the CFO said, you could dissolve it, and other resolutions could back it up for now. It would still affect some things, but not critical. But that meeting didn't happen. So I made several calls out to DCA. I did not get I'm gonna say to the right office, or, you know, they weren't really talking to me. They don't like to talk to elected officials. They would prefer, you know, so they did speak a lot to the CFO, but at no time will they give an opinion. They would not give an official opinion. They're like, yeah, we just don't do that. That would be on you. So at the time, we did not have an attorney, because if we had an attorney that actually represented the borough, that's why they have malpractice insurance, that could have been asked, and if the attorney said, nah, I'd recommend you pass the resolution, or I recommend you dissolve it, or, you know, maybe you don't need it, but we didn't have that. So it got to the point of, to be honest with you, what was going to be the worst of two evils? To not pay our employees, which we cannot not do, and or pay the employees, but after we've extinguished all of the other avenues. We had an opportunity to rectify it in 5 minutes, which we chose not to do, and left it to where, you know, we basically had to wait. And I know Wednesday night, the CFO, you know, basically got his final word that he's not really getting an official word.
Did you and Mr. Arnone go to Trenton?
I did not have to, no. They basically told me they said, yeah, it wouldn't matter. They are not going to give, they will not give an official opinion. Now, I had a lot of opinions. I had a lot of opinions from attorneys. I had opinions from people who are CFOs, people who think they're CFOs. But no one, and in reality, no one can give an opinion to Neptune City unless they work for Neptune City. You know, no firm is going to allow one of their employee or an attorney give an official opinion without, you know, nor could we accept it. They're not on retainer. There's no contract with them, you know. So Mr. Antonides said he will take that chance, and, you know, it's his certification, and he did that. But, like, again, it was really what was the lesser of the two evils. That's why we ended up there. Yes.
Thank you.
Kelly Strasdis, 3 Overbrook Place. I have to say that I am so disappointed. First of all, this is not personal. This is about town. It's like business. So when I ask you this question, what was the statute that made Mrs. Brown decide that she couldn't do the payroll? And that she was, what was the number? You're giving out numbers of statutes.
It wasn't a statute.
That's right. And what was the law that you assumed that she was going to
You
break?
familiar with what a municipal clerk's responsibility is?
Oh, I've been asking questions since January 1st. So the opinion is that there is no such statute for that resolution that did not get passed.
It's got nothing to do with statute.
It's my turn to talk. The resolution that did not get passed, the resolution that didn't get passed was for summer bills, as far as I understand it. Bills, when we are only having one meeting a month. Okay. We're not doing that anymore. Apparently, the calendar says 2 meetings a month. That one resolution was supposedly to pay bills in June, July, and August. It had nothing to do with payroll. The other resolution had to do with payroll. Whatever's happening here is because people are mad that new people are interested in politics in Neptune City.
Girl.
I am not growing up. I have been sitting here and listening to this for weeks now. It's ridiculous. Our new council members have been voted in. Just let them do their job. In other towns, when a turnover happens, there is a holdover. And it's happened and assisted naturally and nicely by the current administration. That did not happen here. We have to play nice. We live in a town as big as Mayberry. I don't understand what's happening here. This is ridiculous. You know, we raised our kids together, Bob. I hear you saying things that are not true. You didn't need to go to DCA. I watched the video. You didn't need to go to DCA because it wasn't necessary. Business as usual is happening in our offices. If our other people could talk, they would be able to tell you that.
It's not happening, Ms. Strassis. So let me
So our payroll's not happening.
No, well, that's payroll, but that's Mr. Antonides took.
So if we're late
So
by 2 weeks on our gas bill, where's that going to get us?
Let me explain how that happened. So, as municipal clerk has a they have a state certification, okay, that it takes several years to obtain.
I know about the certification.
When there is a question regarding whether if something is sustainable, a clerk, that's their job to determine whether if it is or not, according to their best ability, and when not, they have a municipal attorney to ask.
Well,
And
where was
not-
ours? He wasn't here on January
And he
1st.
was not the attorney on January 1st.
There's normally a holdover.
No,
so
there's
what
not
happened to
normally.
them?
He would have to agree to it. He did not agree to hold over.
Oh,
He did not agree to hold over. You can't make them. They would have to agree to hold over. He wasn't even here. I mean, I don't even
Right,
think
and
he was in
and-
the state. So, but he was not interested in holding over.
right.
So, without having a municipal attorney, it was a question, it was a concern of the clerk. So the normal thing to have done is have the meeting and voted on it. So unfortunately, it just, piled and piled and piled. And it's, unfortunately, Tammy resigned. She was, I guess, had enough reason to give up almost 17 years working for the borough.
Any chance of getting her back?
Not a chance.
Not a chance, that's how bad it
And
is.
she doesn't have another job,
And that's how bad it is, not a chance.
but she won't come back. As of now, no, I don't see that happening.
So one more thing to clear it up. If you had a quorum who decided not to have that meeting, legally, should you have had that meeting? And was there a quorum who decided to have that meeting? There was no quorum to
No, you
decide?
can't have a quorum unless you're in a meeting.
Yeah.
There's such thing called the Open
Or
Public
is
Meetings Act.
there not a phone call quorum or an email quorum?
Nope,
Oh,
against the law.
according to Robert's rules?
It's not Robert's rules. Robert's rules is how you conduct the business. The law is Open Public Meetings Act.
Oh, okay,
And you
right.
cannot have more than a majority meet, discuss items at the same order and come to any conclusion unless you're in a, this is where we make quorum. This is where we vote
And-
to take action.
And on the record, you can't do that via email or phone?
Not once the meeting is, no, you cannot. You're violating the Open Public Meetings Act.
That means that we wouldn't be able to hear what they have to say.
Well, they go into closed
No,
session all the time.
That's a closed session. But
Excuse
they
me, I'm
would be-
sorry, what? you're-
Oh, I'm Kathy McGrory, 73 Wilson Avenue. We would have to hear what they say. Yes,
Okay.
you can't
If
do
there's,
it.
anytime there's more than three, if you can make quorum, you're supposed to be in a public advertised meeting. That's when you are on the record, because outside of more than three, or below three, you cannot act. You cannot act in any official capacity, because you don't have a majority. Once you reach four, you have a majority. You are now violating the Open Public Meetings Act. Does that make sense?
Oh, I
We
understand
can't,
it.
we
I just
can't
don't know
meet
if I
four of
agree
us
with
outside of here and decide on what we're going to do, and then, put it on paper or in an email. We're not supposed to make any, there's no decisions that can be made on behalf of the borough, on behalf of the governing body, unless we're here in quorum, and that's when the majority has say. Outside of quorum, outside of a public meeting that has been duly advertised or noticed, it does not.
In the
can't
past,
do
at
that.
the school board meetings, when I've been at school board meetings through my history of just being in the audience, so maybe I misunderstood, but I do believe they could have a quorum if an emergency arose or something happened and they needed to get in touch with each other. As long as there were a majority, then they were able to make a decision, so I
Not
don't
as far as
know.
I've been told and understand, and I think I have one of the teachers of the,
The state law on meetings is that you can't have an emergency meeting.
Mhm.
It has to be something which affects the public safety, health, and welfare of the residents of the town. They could call a meeting, if something happened this afternoon,
Mhm.
they could call a meeting tonight
Sandy.
under the emergency and then follow certain statutes about, then have to report it to the state. They can also, another type of meeting is the meeting which was held last week, the 48-hour notice meeting.
Right.
anybody on the governing body or the governing body can call for a meeting, a special meeting, just as it was done tonight, and that as long as the newspaper is notified of this meeting, given 48-hour notice, they can have a meeting, and they have to have a quorum in order to conduct any business.
So could a quorum have called that meeting, and could a quorum have canceled that meeting?
No.
No, it's,
That meeting was already called, the meeting was noticed,
One-
advertised, and published. It was a meeting. There was two ways to make. We could have called, which we couldn't even have called an emergency meeting, because that doesn't justify an emergency meeting. Two things, we could either have the meeting, eliminated that resolution, or pass the resolution. And that was a recommendation from the CFO. Like he said, well, maybe you don't need it, but it was acted on New Year's Day, so it became a document, it became part of the record, so we had to do something with it. So there were two ways to do it. You either meet and voted, up, down, abolish it so you don't need it, or just don't come to the meeting and you don't make quorum, and then the meeting's canceled, because then it's not really a meeting. Those are the only two ways you could have handled that meeting. Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Calhoun, Ms. Lewis, Ms. Renee, and Mr. Costas.
Name your name and address, please.
Jen Coombs, I'm part of Citizen Media. I would like to know how come you guys didn't show up last Monday for the sake of Neptune City? I'm directing this to all four of you.
Yeah, I'll start. So, we didn't think the meeting was necessary at all by January 1st. Excuse me, I'm speaking. So before business even resumed, because Mrs. Brown was off, that was already decided that it wasn't needed. Yet a letter went out scaring our employees. So, that they wouldn't be paid. Were they not scared? We all heard about it. So, we decided that we didn't need to have another forum for grandstanding or for segregation of this council. We knew it was solved, we knew they would be paid, and there would be no reason for a meeting other than to try to parade us, to try to make people angry instead of bringing out the facts. Have you ever heard this council talk yet as a team? No. This is our third meeting, second meeting, whatever it is. This is our only, he just said, this is our only time to talk when we're in a public meeting. Have you heard us discuss one thing? Does he know why we voted down that resolution again? Do we know why he put the exact resolution back on the agenda without modifying it?
Mrs. Lewis, I'd like to back up a little bit.
No, we don't know that, okay? So there are more things here that we're not being able to talk about. And we talked about, maybe afterwards, if you want, we'll do a Q&A off the record on meeting, whatever, because we don't have a voice. But there could be opportunities that maybe 2 or 3 of us talk, and hey, we're thinking this, how about more 2 or 3 talk, and 2 or 3 talk? And isn't that the way that you communicate and you move forward?
Well,
So what's not happening here is communication.
And before we get off into that,
That's
let's
just my perspective, I'm not speaking for anybody.
I'd like to address, Ms. Costas brought up the point, how come we're not all working together? So let's back up a little bit. The election was certified in mid to late November. I did not speak to the mayor until December 30th, at which time I was really not invited to a meeting. I was asked to come to a meeting that he asked to have with Councilwoman Renee and Councilman Zajac and himself to talk about what we were going to do at reorg. Now mind you, this is the first time I've spoken to the mayor. At that meeting, there was an agenda that had been put forth on the 28th, which was a Friday, that had no professional appointments on it other than the borough attorney. At the meeting on the 30th, which was a Sunday, 2 days before New Year's Day, the mayor stated that he was not prepared to make any professional appointments other than the borough attorney. And that if we said no to that he would make it clear in public that it was our fault, and he lay it all on us, which is essentially what he did.
Excuse me, is it documentation? Was it verbal or written?
This was verbal. I was there.
Move on.
So was I.
So, that said, I'm not trying to call anybody out, I'm not trying to call anybody names, I'm just trying to say, you wanna know why we're not working together? It's the mayor's responsibility to bring his team together, he didn't do it. It's my perception.
All right, so let's talk about that meeting. First of all, Mr. Calhoun, we did speak prior to the 30th.
And by the way, I wasn't seated yet on
So-
council. I wasn't.
He
it wasn't a
was
quorum.
invited to the, he was
So-
invited to the meeting.
As a courtesy.
And yes, Ms. Renee proceeded to tell me what my job, my responsibility was. She shoved the statute in front of me that I need to make appointments on New Year's Day. And, you know, like I said, they are mayor's appointments. At that day, I said, I'm fine with I would make just the attorney for New Year's Day, and then we can discuss, after that, we can discuss everything else. And that's what was said, because Mr. Zajac was there also. That was my offer that day. Ms. Renee informed me that I needed to, you know, if I don't make appointments on New Year's Day, you know, they get to make their appointments in 30 days. So, you know, I still offered, again, the attorney, because still, in my opinion, you're gonna have two things they can do after January the 31st. They can either appoint the attorney that met the RFQ, or they can go back out for RFQs, because if one of the other attorneys is appointed, I believe it's a violation of the law. I don't have an attorney to ask, but if they didn't meet criteria, I don't, you know, I do bids through public work in the state. If I don't meet criteria, I get disqualified right there. I could be the low bid on a beautiful job, and if I don't meet the criteria, they won't give me the job. They give it to the next guy. I've received jobs that way too, because the low bidder's not been qualified and we were second. But you know, that was my thought on that day. And if Mr. Calhoun and Ms. Renee remember, I handed you, basically I said, here, make your own committees, put your people, put whoever you want on, take whoever you want off, which I was fine with. You put a lot of volunteers on, took a lot of volunteers off, removed council members that sat on boards for, you know, Board of Recreation. We took the council member off of Board of Recreation, took the council member off of Land Use Board, off of Board of Recreation, you name it, and I was okay with it. I was fine with it. There was one critical one, which I said, you know what, I'm not happy with it, and I can't get on board with that, and that was the Office of Emergency Management. I just can't wrap my head around removing somebody who's been in a position, doing a good job, has been through all the classes and certified, and works incredibly well with our Office of Emergency Management, which, you know, we've done a great job with our Office of Emergency Management here in Neptune City since Sandy, and prior to Sandy, and since. I couldn't just pull that guy out of the top, my coordinator, who's qualified, has all the certifications, does a great job, and has a great team that love to work together, and just put another guy in there that I was told by many, if that's what they do, I'm done. And, you know, I just couldn't do that. You know, that is something that is an asset to Neptune City. It's very important in an emergency. So that was one of the things I said, I gotta stand fast. They're still the mayor's appointments, and that's all by statute. They are the mayor's appointments. The council has the right to either confirm or deny the mayor's appointments. I did my job on New Year's Day. Nobody can say that I did not do my job. I allowed, and I asked, and they made up their own committees. They put who they wanted on the committees. I don't have it with me tonight. You know, each committee, they took things off of some committees and put them on other committees. Didn't argue with it one bit. Did I argue with it one bit? Not one bit. I was fine with it. Put your volunteers on. You brought a lot of new people in. I was fine with it. But I did my job on New Year's Day. I offered, every professional I offered was in the bid specs. They met the criteria, and in my opinion, as the mayor, and you know, that's who I felt was going to be in the best interest of Neptune City. Now the council, their job was to confirm that. To be honest with you, I still to this day, I do not understand the attorney issue, because they're not more than it was kind of like a no-brainer. I got one attorney to appoint. I was fine with it. They met the criteria. They're a good firm, more than qualified, so. Yes, sir.
John Gunderson, 123 Woodland Avenue. What I'm seeing tonight is that everybody here is pointing fingers and blaming everybody else. This is a personnel issue, and this is one of those things where all 7 of you someone could move to have a closed session, and all 7 of you could go into a closed session, okay, and work this out. You're telling me no. Why couldn't you do that? Isn't our personnel issues supposed to be discussed in closed session and then come out?
We're not discussing personnel, Mr. Gunderson, because we have no attorney.
Right.
And I have no clerk.
Well, but
I
see,
cannot go into closed session.
Their personnel, all I'm saying is that can't the 7 of you get together and work this out, rather than just hold all of us hostage? We're all sitting here mad at each other, we're all divided. I'm just saying, this is one time when you shouldn't be so open.
So, Mr. Gunderson, let me address just one thing. So, tonight.
Don't point your finger at me.
I wasn't pointing at you.
Okay.
I said one thing, which really surprised me tonight. I was actually very surprised because I have the email from Miss Renee that I really thought we were in agreement on Mr. Underhill. As a matter of fact, Miss Renee said, oh, she was glad that Mr. Underhill was kind of, stay on. And tonight we got here and they voted no. I mean, that's a critical part of the day-to-day operation. So
we don't know why, because
I don't know why.
Miss Renee speak.
Go ahead.
The reason why we said no is because of the contract itself, and it would be disingenuous to the taxpayers if we said yes according to the contract. He didn't show up for work for the first 2 weeks, so. The contract says we pay him for those 2 weeks. It also says that we give him a severance of 3 months after we let him go, basically. And it would just be disingenuous to the taxpayers, being that we already said no on January 1st. There are temporary appointments that could be made. The treasurer, we have a very, very qualified person in our office, Al Jardine, who could have been appointed treasurer, and we would have said yes. We have a very qualified person, Sylvia McLaughlin, who could be deputy clerk. We would say yes to that without hesitation. If the mayor would return my phone calls, if any of the Republicans up here would return my phone calls, we could have discussed this ahead of time.
You called me one time, Miss Renee, and you called me on my son's birthday a half hour before the meeting.
Okay, we could have discussed this, and it could have been worked out. We could have a treasurer right now. We could have a deputy clerk. Everything would be operating smoothly without question. So we have 2 weeks. We have 2 weeks to make our appointments, and then everything will be operating smoothly again. Yeah.
No, I don't think it.
Yes, state your name and address, please.
Joe Popkin could have been nominated.
Well,
I mean.
he was a couple different things, as far as what you just said, these people, if they accepted the position, that could have been done tonight. You could offer a resolution.
No, because you know why? Because nobody was rice noticed. I've received no communication from Miss Renee other than criticism and belittling, the email that you sent to me, belittling me, informing me that who I am and I am nothing here in Neptune City anymore. And you are now, would you like, don't what, I got the email right here.
Okay,
I'll share it with everybody.
I do too.
And how,
I do too.
hold on, and how that's the way
I
it's
would like to
gonna
have a
be.
copy of that
I would
email.
love to give you one. And that is the way it's going to be for the rest of the year. And I may not like it, but that's the form of government. All I get to do is come to council meetings. Because she is now council president, and I don't want to.
Doesn't say any of that.
Oh, okay, I'll read it.
Read it,
This
yes,
is-
read it into
I'll make sure I
record.
give it
Can
out.
we try to move forward,
So
please?
we can move forward. So here's what we're gonna do. We have 2 weeks.
You can read it afterwards.
We have 2 weeks, as Miss Renee said, we have 2 weeks, and they think everything, order, please, all right? Listen, we're not gonna get into this. As I've said before, the facts are the facts. Everybody can say what they've said, and they get opinions, but I've not gotten one communication from anybody with any recommendations. So as the mayor, my recommendations are for the mayor's appointments under my thoughts of best interest of the borough. And the professionals that I recommended and the volunteers that I recommended for the positions they were in, and all the volunteers that you guys recommended, I was fine with everything. There were a couple of little holdups. But, you know, I can't explain all of it. Like I said, up until the other day, until yesterday, I thought we were fine with Mr. Underhill becoming the
We would have said yes to
Borough
Mr. Underhill's
administrator.
2-week appointment, but that's not what we received. We received a contract for another
It's-
year appointment.
It's a 1-year appointment, so it's a 1 year according to borough ordinance, you can appoint him for 1 year. You could appoint him for 1 year today, and
As
you could
chief
go.
administrative officer,
and you could
it was
go-
your duty to handle all of the holdovers. He could have been a temporary holdover, just like all of the other professionals.
No, when you voted no on him on New Year's Day, you fired him. You don't hold over when you get fired. I
The
explained that to
holdovers
you.
take place
I'm
prior
not-
to New Year's Day, so that,
I'm
like
not
you had
going
promised
to-
us in
I
our
didn't-
meeting
I
with
did not
David
promise
and
you a
Joe,
thing, Miss
that the
Renee.
holdovers were in place.
Miss Renee, I did not promise you a thing. And this is why
It's
I
recorded.
will only meet and discuss things in a public meeting, because there always seems to be a distortion to the facts.
It's recorded.
It is. This is recorded.
It is recorded.
I did not promise you that everybody would, so you were recording me in the meeting?
Yes,
Oh,
I
aren't
was.
you slick? I don't really care. I did not promise you a holdover. I can't promise you that somebody else is going to do something. It can happen, but they have to agree to it. I didn't promise you. How can I promise you what?
Could we let this go and move forward, please?
Well, no, this is when we have the opportunity to have a public discussion. Gunderson?
As the chief administrative officer, it's your duty, it is your duty to make sure there's a smooth transition of government, and you have failed at that.
No, I did not. Ms. Renee. You failed. You voted, 4 of you voted no on
And that
simple
happens
appointments.
That happens in every other town, and they don't have these issues.
No, it does not happen. These were appointments that were very easily, you could end Mr. Underhill's contract next week. You could say you're gone. You're
And that
paying
would
him
be
3 months
disingenuous
anyway.
to
You are
the
paying him
taxpayers.
3 months anyway. I explained that to you when you weren't going, when you did not rehire him on New Year's Day. You broke his contract. Under his contract and contract law, you're paying him for 3 months anyway. So what difference does it matter if it's January, February, March, or if it's February, March, and April? At least you'd have him for a month. We could bring him, you could bring a new person in, and I explained that to you. We'll talk to Mr. Underhill. You did not want to hear any of that. On New Year's Day, we met downstairs. I did not meet with you. Mr. Zajac went to you downstairs and asked you, would you like to, as we discussed, would you like to table all the professionals, except for Mr. Underhill, because I really thought he was still going to get appointed. I said, we'll table all the professionals, and Mr. Zajac went and asked you, and your response was, no, just leave them on, it'll be faster that way. So it was faster that way. So if they were tabled, then they could have carried, and Mr. Underhill would have been the administrator under his former contract. We wouldn't be here trying to do an interim. So don't say that I failed. I offered right up to the 11th hour, the 12th hour, I offered the options of what in the best interest of this borough, and you were dead set. There was a no vote on New Year's Day. No matter what. You must dislike me and what I've done and made here in Neptune City so much that you are willing to do anything to change everything. And that's how I feel. So, however you might want to say it, there is in no way, shape, or form that I fail at my job.
Tabling those appointments would extend this chaos to 60 days, 90 days, so we have 30 days to work with, and then we make our appointments. That's the state statute. If we would have tabled them, then this would have gone on and on. There's no difference.
No,
All
they would've-
holdovers would have been holdovers anyway.
And
But
we
for
could have
some
discussed
reason,
them, but
you
you
did
did
not
not
take
want to
care of
hear
that.
any of that. You were just, no, it was a
As
no
the chief
vote.
administrative
Was
officer,
anybody
that was
here
your
that
duty.
day? Was anybody here on New Year's Day? It was a lot of no vote. There was no options. There was a no vote. And to be honest with you, as of right now, I don't think it would have really mattered which way it went. I think there would have been no votes.
We would still have a deputy clerk right now. We would still have a clerk right now too if you didn't instruct her to send an email to all the employees telling them
That's
they
right.
wouldn't be paid.
That's right.
What?
No, it's not that, Miss Renee. The reason we don't have a deputy clerk is because you threatened her in an email with legal action, Mrs. Lewis, and that she will be dealt with in emails of threatening, and she was
no
instructed.
threats. There was absolutely no threats.
And on behalf of the governing body, as council president, which council president in this form of government is you get to sit in this seat if I'm not here. Other than that, that is what the council president does under this form of government. So I'm not going to continue arguing about this. Does anybody else have a question? Because this is going nowhere. Yes, sir.
No, I just want to originally say something. I see something happening here, and I'm not blaming anybody up there, and, you know, it's a shame that communication has failed, apparently, with this. But I can see, because I go around the state, I'm the executive director for the state municipal clerks, and I see the processes going on, and right now, the state has come in and taken over the town because they're not functioning the way they should according to state statute, whether it be paying bills, whether it be not having an attorney, whatever it is. I don't want that to happen in Neptune City, because Neptune City is not like the towns where it's happened right now, like Atlantic City or Patterson or, you know, some of the other towns that it's happening in. So, you know, I think that you have to get things resolved. You have to get them resolved soon. And on some of the things that are especially important that they're going to look at. Right now, there's no one in the office that can process an Oprah request. By statute, it has to be the clerk or the deputy clerk if the clerk isn't there. You know, you're opening yourself up for a lawsuit because anybody can go to the GRC or the Superior Court and say they're not answering my Oprah request within 7 work days. That's what it has to be done. You're not giving the services to the residents, because right now, if someone comes in for a marriage license or a death certificate, anything for the Register of Vital Statistics, they're gonna have to go out to the state to get that, because that's their other option. If they don't get it in their town, then they have to go to the state to get these documents. So, you know, a lot of services aren't being provided for the residents, and I'm concerned. I was here as 25 years as administrator. I'm concerned about the town, you know, what happens here. Even though I'm not here right now, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm not concerned. And I think that, you know, these things have to be resolved soon. One reminder, when you do the advertising and for a municipal clerk, I'm sure you probably know, but you can there's only 2 ways you can hire a municipal clerk. You have to hire someone that has a RMC, which is a Registered Municipal Clerk Certificate. And that person gets hired for 3 years, a 3-year term. If they don't have that, you're allowed one time to hire someone as what they call an acting clerk. The acting clerk is for 1-year appointment, and it's by, it can be renewed if you get permission from the state, but that's if they don't have their certificate. You can't just take anybody and say, you're gonna be a municipal clerk for a month or 2 months or whatever. You have to either do the 1-year appointment acting or the 3-year appointment. And at this point, I'd also say that when you get down to it, if you need any help with the selection of a municipal clerk, I know, because you don't have an administrator or anybody else, I would offer to come in with the position that I have and knowing the job of a municipal clerk, to sit down with the mayor and the council in any interviews or any help that I can give you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Poppy. You know, again, I still believe that, you know, Mr. Underhill should have been reappointed tonight. If there was an issue with the contract, it could have been talked about, but it wasn't talked about. It wasn't when it came time for questions. Nobody said anything about paying him for the 2 weeks. By the way, it was planned he was not here the first couple days because he was on vacation scheduled last year, and he got back a couple days after New Year's. And then once you fired him, that's why he didn't come back. I mean, generally that's the reason why I don't go back to a job if I, you know, once you get fired, no point in going back. And Mr. Underhill would have filled all of those positions. That would have, you know, deputy clerk, treasurer. Those are the positions that he would have filled.
Absolutely.
So again, there was no suggestion, no questions or comments when it was offered and seconded to talk about Mr. Underhill's. You know, Mr. Underhill was rice noticed, and he could have been discussed here in public. I have his letter of return from his rice notice. because, you know, I wanna make sure that we are doing everything, you know, I'm reaching out to professionals that I know, they can't give me official advice, but I made sure I rice noticed Mr. Underhill. I got his, response back, he said he could be discussed in public. Cause when you talk about employees, that's what you're supposed to do, and, you know, yes, sir.
I would just add, Mr. Mayor, I have to agree with you, the state statute says I get paid the 90 days if I'm let go. I am willing to work within that 90 days if you all agree that you would like me to work during that period of time. But I think it takes a vote of the majority to have me do that. And that's not a holdover, that's just to work out the 90-day period.
So you work for 90 days from the date, now when you're released, do we still owe you 90 days from your original contract?
Just the 90 days from January 1st.
Well, I'll be on, okay, I don't, now if you're let go before the 90 days, you'll be paid the remainder of the 90 days, because that's contract. That's more than fair.
Why don't they vote on it?
Well, someone will have to offer that. If they were interested in that offer, they could offer that, it could get seconded and voted on, and Mr. Underhill could be in the office tomorrow morning.
Somebody offered
So
it.
offered by Mr. Wardell,
Second.
second by Mr. Zajac. Roll call would be Mr. Zajac,
Yes.
Ms. Renee,
No, I would be open to a 2-week.
okay. Hold on, folks, we're in roll call, and I don't have it in front of me, so I gotta, okay. Mr. Wardell,
Yes.
You got the wrong person here, me.
Mr. Kosis,
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
56, so
No.
I think I have the right to say so.
Mr. Calhoun.
No.
I will vote, and my answer is yes. So I will break the tie. I will put Mr. Underhill back in for 90 days at a maximum. If he's let go prior to that, under this resolution that just got passed, he will be paid the remainder as his original contract. Because if he left now, you're paying him 90 days anyway to not even be here. And I think it's extremely generous of him to have offered to work inside that 90 days. So, Mr. Underhill, I want to thank you, not only for what you're going to continue doing, but everything you have done with this borough. Resolution is adopted.
This has been.
Motion to adjourn.
No.
Oh, yes, sir.
I'll be brief, you know, I am an actor. You a ventriloquist? I'm Ted Wardell, I live at 9 Tucker Drive in Neptune City. I did have a lot to say, but I will say I'm extremely disappointed. I'm hoping that I look at my calendar and say, today is January the 14th. It's the day that Neptune City government starts to function. And I want to be able to say that a month from now. Guys, you're not functioning now. And I finally figured out why. I think it's just a lack of communications. You're not talking to each other. And so there's been some decisions made tonight I strongly disagree with. So what? Wasn't my decision to make. I voted for you and you and you. It was your decision to make. You make it. You live with it. I'm fine with it. There's just one issue that I cannot let you off the hook for. You don't have the right, you council people, to decide, oh, I think I can go to this meeting, but don't have to go to that meeting.
Right.
I think this issue is resolved. Even the DCA didn't know if it was resolved or not. You abrogated your duty as an elected official to me, to the rest of these people, residents of Neptune City, severely in not showing up, that making a decision, a conscious decision. I'm not showing up because I don't think it's necessary. Well, it was necessary. It was. It really was. It's the only issue I can't let you off the hook for. As the rest of it, I am telling you right now, I get it, Mr. Knight. You're the majority. You're the 800-pound gorilla. You're the boss. I get that. What I don't get is the inability, my perceived inability, for you all to function together. Because in order to work for Neptune City, to do the duties that are incumbent upon Neptune City elected officials, it takes all 6 of you. It can't be 1 or 2. It has to be all of you. So whatever previous animosities you all hold, please, put them on a shelf, and in the future, start talking to each other. Yeah, you may pleasantly be surprised at how much more you have in common. And it was, I thank you, Mrs. Lewis, because as you were talking, I actually was looking at my son's face in my living room because he said the same damn thing you did, and yet you don't communicate. He embellished a little bit more, but he said the same thing. He is my son. And that's all I have. In reference to that, I'm just really disappointed in you guys. I don't think you intentionally did it, but you did it. So in the future, please, if there is a called for duly noted meeting, do not make your own determination whether you think it deems your best interest to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. You back?
My name is Kevin Fisher. I live at 16 Home Street. And with respect to the last question about hiring your attorney, I think there were 3 people that voted no. And I'd like to respectfully ask any one of them why they voted no.
He has the highest rate, yeah, he has the highest rate. The other 2 that didn't submit their applications properly, it was simply their salary was not designated.
On this question right here that was asked.
For the attorney.
Yeah. Just now.
Oh, no, the BA or the attorney?
That's a business aide, a business administrator.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Ken Fioretti. I'm with Joe and Paul Zeiden and Al Degash. They're the owners of Neptune City Plaza. That's the shopping center next to the Stop and Shop. And I was hoping, I perceive a little bit of issues between you, but I'm hoping that we can speak about the property, talk about some of the things that have gone on, a little bit of the history, and just, explain what the objectives are for the property.
Well, tonight, this is not for presentation.
That's not a presentation. I'm just gonna make one simple request.
Okay.
The property is vacant. The 68,000 square foot has been used as a warehouse for the past 20 years, been operated as a warehouse. There's somebody that wants to do a redevelopment, take a vacant property, which is potentially gonna become a blight on the community, and make something nice there. I'm simply asking that you would consider having them come in at the next council meeting when you think is viable. Make a presentation, show you and the public what they have in mind, what they want for the property. And if you think it's something that would be good for the community, give them the right to go before the zoning board. You would consider lifting the existing restriction. I'm happy to speak about any of this if you have any questions about it, but I know you're in a hurry. It's been a long night, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But if you just consider lifting the restriction after true public hearing, public input, land use board, full application, they've been ready to go. They've wanted to do this. They wanted to do public hearing. The board attorney wouldn't let them because there was a restriction, so they were in this catch-22. They couldn't do a presentation because of the restriction, and they wanted to do the redevelopment, but they could never go forward. And the problem was.
Excellent.
Okay, so all I'm asking is, if you would consider letting them make a presentation to the board, if you like what they have in mind for the property, permit them to go to the land use board, make a full application, public hearing, everything that is required. And if the board approves it, after everyone has a chance to see what they want to do with the property, you would consider lifting the restriction.
Okay. I'll tell you, why don't tomorrow morning, call the municipal office after 8:30, speak with Mr. Underhill, give him your information, and he will schedule or coordinate some type of presentation from you guys.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brad Hines, 96 Hawthorne Ave, 185 West Sylvania, 51 East End Avenue. First off, see that we're making progress already. Mr. Underhill's back in office. He's working already 8:30 a.m. I would like to, now that they mentioned this property, I'd like the council to know one more time, put my objection to the redevelopment of that property on record. Next subject.
If we set up a presentation,
yep,
it'll be noticed,
I'll be
it'll
there
be
to oppose
advertised,
it.
and you can come and listen to see what they have to say.
In the
I just ask.
Maybe it'll buy out.
I'm not interrupting. Please just keep an open mind.
You have to address them in the meeting, not me.
Okay.
You can't address them, you have to address them. Lastly, as a borough employee, the payroll's being paid, our health insurance premium is also being paid. That's important to all the employees. That's
We talked about that before. That is still something that I wish the council would have just abolished that resolution tonight. I really wish they would have. But,
Well, as long as the health insurance and payroll is being paid,
It's being paid.
good. Then I'm not saying that everything's all right, but
I don't know that it's all right.
as long as nobody loses any benefits or loses a reduction.
Don't
of
worry,
benefits,
we're
we're good.
making sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just one more thing. I appreciate that
Yeah,
there's concerns about the property. We want to make a full public presentation and listen
that's
to
what we'll
everyone's
do.
concerns, find out what anyone has a problem, address anything that we possibly can to make it good, and we're gonna do the best job we can.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no one else, need a motion to adjourn.
So offered.
Offered by Mr. Wardell, seconded by Mr. Zajac. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting is closed.